Okay, let's just dive right in. Picture this. You've just built a beautiful brand new screen enclosure in Florida. I mean, it looks absolutely perfect. But then the inspector shows up and it fails. It happens way more than you'd think. And today we're going to break down exactly why. We are going to cover the top 5 reasons that screen enclosure inspections fail here in Florida, so you can avoid all those frustrating delays and, of course, the unexpected costs that come with your project. All right, let's start from the ground up. Literally. The number one reason for failure is often something you can't even see once the project is done, and that is an improper foundation. Look, the Florida Building Code is totally non-negotiable on this one. Your enclosure has to be anchored to a permitted, reinforced concrete slab or footer. If you try to build on dirt or even on unpermitted pavers, that's an automatic fail. The foundation itself has to be legally permitted and structurally sound, period. Okay, next up is a mistake that can happen before a single screw is even turned, getting the location wrong. This brings us right to our second point, property setback violations. So a setback, what is it? It's just the required minimum distance between your enclosure and your property line, and it's all defined by local zoning. The key here is precision. The location of the finished enclosure has to match the approved site plan exactly. I mean, even being off by a few inches can trigger a failure and force some really costly changes.
All right, let's talk about a critical safety issue that inspectors take very, very seriously, especially if your enclosure is built on a raised deck or patio.
Think about your own backyard for just a second. Is your patio raised off the ground at all? If you said yes, then this next part is absolutely critical for you. Here's the magic number, 30 inches. According to the Florida Building Code, if the drop from the edge of your patio to the ground below is more than 30 inches, a guardrail is mandatory. There's no gray area here, it is a clear-cut rule. And, of course, the rule has a second part. That required guardrail has to be at least 36 inches high. An inspector will literally come out with a tape measure to check this. So if it's even a little bit off, it's an immediate fail. Now, reason number 4 has nothing to do with the actual physical structure itself, but it can stop an inspection cold. We're talking about missing on-site documents. The rule is simple. All the required paperwork has to be on-site for the inspector. For any project over $2,500, this includes a super important document called the Notice of Commencement, or NOC. It has to be notarized, filed with the county, and physically present. If it's not there, the inspector can fail you on the spot and just walk away.
And finally, we've arrived at our 5th and final common reason for failure. This one is all about sticking to the plan, literally.
So an inspector's main job is to meticulously compare the finished enclosure to the approved engineering plans. And every little detail matters, from the size of the beams and the exact placement of the structural anchors, all the way to the slope of the roof. Everything has to match the blueprint. Any unapproved change is grounds for an immediate failure. So we've covered the 5 biggest pitfalls, but knowing these risks is the very first step to avoiding them. Let's turn this whole thing into a simple checklist for passing your inspection. Let's just recap real quick. It all comes down to these 5 key areas: a proper foundation, correct property setbacks, the required safety features, having all your documents in order, and making sure the construction perfectly matches the approved plans. The most important thing to remember here is that almost every single failure is predictable, and more importantly, it's preventable. With proper planning and an experienced team that really knows Florida's codes, you can avoid these common headaches completely. Having an expert partner who lives and breathes these codes is for sure the best way to get it right. At Screen Factory Florida, our team has over 15 years of experience building safe, code-compliant enclosures that are designed from day one to pass inspection. So if you want to move forward with your project with complete confidence, let's talk. Go ahead and schedule a free estimate with us today, and let's build you an enclosure that's not only beautiful, but built to last and guaranteed to pass.